Okay, in this video, I'm just going to go through quite quickly the EQ. And the way to find it in Pro Tools is to select on the insert, plug in EQ, EQ3, 7-band. 7-band will give all the options. 1-band is all the separates that you can apply. So if you just want to apply a low pass filter, you can do that, or just a standard parametric bell EQ, you can just bring the one in. But this one here will show all those options. So here is the EQ. We have the input and the output level meters. They are governed by the input and output pots there. We can adjust those to gain stage should there be too much signal going in or not enough coming out, and vice versa. There is also a phase polarity switch, so we can then flip the phase on the audio to test and see whether that's the best sound or not. You have the high pass filter and low pass filter. These are indicated here by the slopes, and they can also be changed to notch filters as well, just for eliminating frequencies. But I would have actually advised keeping those as filters. You need to turn it on in order to activate it, and you'll see that unlike Logic, Pro Tools only go up to 8 kilohertz for the high pass filter, and turn that off. And if I do the low pass filter and then bring that down, it goes down as far as 120 hertz. As I say, Logic will do 2020, and if I hold the Option key, which is also the Alt key, that will reset it. Now I'm just going to put a value of 100 hertz in here, because I'm going to show you what the slope does, which is this 6 dB per octave. So what this means is how aggressive the slope is for the cut. Now, at 100 hertz here on the line, it's down by about 3 dB. The next octave below 100 hertz is 50 hertz. And by the time we get to that, you'll see that we are about 6 dB down. And then the next value beneath that as an octave is, again, half of 50 is then 25. Now, if we get down to about 25, which is somewhere in and around here, we are now just beneath the -12. So we then drop down per octave 6 decibels. And you'll see that the gradient on that is very gradual. And so by the time you get to 12.5 hertz, which would be somewhere down here, that would be down to -18. If I increase this so that we're now at -18, so it's now more aggressive, we'll see that we've still got our -3 sort of value here. But by the time we get to the 50 hertz, we are now down at -18. And that means that the cutoff of those frequencies is much more aggressive, and that will actually do a maximum of 24 dB. So by the time we get to 50 hertz, we've already cut off 24 dB of background information. So it's a really good way of cleaning up the audio, especially on low frequencies or things that have high frequencies but may gain background noise and stuff, such as vocals. They may have sort of a headphone bleed from the bass coming out of them. So you got the filters here, and again, obviously this replicates it, but from the low pass or the high cut frequencies. Across the bottom, we've then got the shelf EQ. We've got one here for the low shelf frequency information and one for the high shelf. And we've got 3 parameters for this. We've got the frequency selection. You can see that's moving along the line there. You can also grab it as well and just move that. And then you've got the gain. So we can either boost at that frequency or we can cut. And there's a 12 dB either way, so, for that. And essentially what this is for is you can lift a larger area of the frequencies from a certain point and beneath. It doesn't have too much of an impact up the frequencies above. However, you do have a Q value, which then alters the notch before the actual EQ takes place. So in this instance, if I decrease this value, you start to see that there's more of a slope, and now the shelf EQ does have more impact moving further up the frequency spectrum, and it's not so heavy-handed at this end, which you may or may not want. But if you want to be a bit more precise, then you can obviously bring that closer up. And if I then bring this up now, the value to it's at 2, in the boost position, you can see that it has like a little notch beneath it, so it actually cuts just beneath that, and then obviously it gives a little bit of a point and then sort of trails away. And if I do this as a cut, you'll see that it adds a little boost before that frequency and that before they drop away, so it kind of gives back a little bit. You can, if I just option click those back to the beginning, you can also use it as a parametric or bell EQ as well. And I'm just going to leave that back in shelf and just show you these three are default and set as parametric or bell EQ. These are the ones where you can do more surgical things or aesthetically pleasing things. So for example, if we're looking for a bad frequency, I'm just going to do it with this 200 hertz one actually, is increase this, and you can see that's why it has the sometimes the name bell EQ, because it has a bell curve. We can then adjust the center frequency, so just by dragging that, and it goes from 40 hertz here up to 1000 hertz, so they are within a parameter. And same likewise with these, they're all kind of set within a boundary, and you can also drag them manually up here as well. You can then adjust the width, which is done by the Q. So if you're looking for a particularly bad frequency that might be sort of resonating, you can then hunt it down by making it a very narrow curve, find out where the resonance of it is. Be careful that it's not too loud, that it hurts your ears. So you can then do that, find the resonant frequency, and then if you shift click, it will then automatically flip it down the opposite. Likewise, if you're trying to find something this way, shift click and it'll push it up the same value, but whether it be cut or boost. So you got those parts of the EQ. Now the other thing, which is really cool about this EQ, is that you can do an isolation, a solo sort of a frequency. Now holding Command Shift and then clicking on the frequency, you'll see now that it will isolate and it will just solo that frequency area. So it works in opposite to the one where I did the boost of a point and then shift click to remove it. So this is a safer way of doing it. So you might find and go, well, okay, I've got a boxy frequency in around here. I can then adjust how much of that I want to eliminate. So you're kind of isolating it there, and then bring the gain down. So this little kind of point then indicates where that'll drop to. Then by letting go, then it removes it. Again, it won't work until you click on a frequency value. Okay, you have to do Control Shift and then click on something for it to work. So there we go. You can start to see. So it's a really good way of eliminating bad frequencies. And then the wider kind of bell sort of, as I say, EQ, where you increase this here, is far more aesthetic. And you can find the frequency where you might want it to kind of to just sort of enrich it a bit more. And most of the time you don't really need a huge amount of EQ. I mean, when people start out doing it, you tend to see drastic kind of movements, but actually you're talking about 2-3 dB of movement, and there's more benefit to actually cutting frequencies. Not to say that you kind of remove it of everything, because when you cut this, there are certain frequencies in around that area that also still add to the sound. So you've got to be careful about how much you affect it. So if you have that, you see it's affecting a wider range. You might need to just narrow it in. And then once you're kind of happy with it, my biggest advice is that you use is this button here, the bypass. That turns the EQ on and off. And then it enables you to kind of justify or work out whether you've made the sound better or worse. So it helps you with that judgment call. And again, you've got independent frequency bypasses as well. So that's the EQ very quickly as an overview. I'll do a couple of things which will be demonstrating it just so you know how to listen to it and how to hear it.